Economic collapse hits home. Feeding America says 1 in 4 children in the US could starve by the end of 2020. There are about 74 million children in the United States, and millions of them currently don't have enough food. The economic collapse that began in 2020 has been brutal for most of the nation, but it has hit children especially hard. If their parents lose their jobs, there is nothing they can do but hope that the donations of the state and the well-being of others will suffice. Unfortunately, most of the time it's not enough, and Feeding America predicts at this point that 1 in 4 children in America will starve by the end of this calendar year. By the end of this year, more than 50 million people could experience food insecurity, according to Feeding America, the country's largest hunger relief organization. That's 1 in 6 Americans and 1 in 4 children, nearly a 50% increase from 2019. A Northwestern University study in June found that food needs had doubled nationally and tripled for households with children. The pandemic has laid bare how many people are one paycheck or medical bill away from hunger. Before the pandemic, more than 20 million children were getting at least free or discounted lunches at school. When lockdowns force schools to close, this makes the hunger crisis worse. There are 22 million children who, even before this pandemic, relied upon free and reduced lunch, said Claire Bobin-Fontaine, the CEO of Feeding America. When you hear that schools are closed, not only does that mean that there are challenges for children with an education, but it also means lost meals. The good news is that the US has a large network of food banks across the country, and this year they have been able to help more people than ever before. According to Feeding America, food banks saw a 60% increase in demand compared to last year. But the bad news is that if demand continues to rise in the coming months, there won't be enough food. Demand at a food store in Alabama has increased 20% since last month. In central Alabama, demand at the Grace Klein Food Pantry is up 20% since last month. It could be the rumors of civil unrest or the rise in COVID cases driving demand. But people are living off this food, said Director Jenny Waltman. The pantry is currently serving about 12,000 people each week, compared with 2,500 a week before the pandemic. The 200 volunteers and staff are exhausted, said Waltman. In one of Chicago's most important food stores, the amount of food delivered increased 237% from last year, and the CEO of this facility says the demand for new lockdowns is starting to rise once again. In Chicago, the Lakeview Pantry has provided groceries for 237% more people so far this year compared to 2019, with demand ramping up again after leveling off slightly over the summer. According to CEO Kelly O'Connell, the pandemic has brought to light how normal wasn't working for so many people, especially black and brown communities. And in California, the head of the Tulare County Food Bank says a food cliff is approaching as demand is so intense. In rural California, at least one food bank braced for a food cliff that could leave it unable to serve clients heading into the new year. The food cliff is looming, said Nicole Kalaya, Executive Director of Tulare County Food Link. The food system hasn't done a very good job of meeting the increased need. As COVID numbers continue to rise, it's going to get worse. All over America, people sleep in their cars and wait hours just to get help from local food banks. If economic conditions continue to worsen, many food banks will soon have no hope of meeting the overwhelming demand. Unfortunately, the reality is that economic conditions are getting worse every day. this new wave of isolation is causing more businesses to go bankrupt and forcing more layoffs, and this means that many more people will soon fall into poverty. I don't know why politicians would want to initiate more isolation after the enormous damage inflicted by the first wave of isolation. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed for a long time, and a significant percentage of them never reopened. Other data from the University of California, Santa Cruz, shows the number of closures could be even higher, with more than 316,000 businesses closed between February and September, which puts the number of daily closures at 1,500 a day. Meanwhile, the New York Post recently reported that Harvard-run database TrackTheRecovery.org showed 27.8% of small businesses in New York haven't reopened their doors since January. In New Jersey, 31.2% remain closed. The national average, according to the database, is 29.8%. Instead of turning to some sort of recovery, we are now heading for a dark winter, where countless more businesses will be shut down. It's hard to imagine the boundaries in food banks going further, but this seems exactly what we can face. In fact, a recent survey found that more than half of all US households with children are not so confident that they will be able to buy the food they need in the coming weeks. Looking ahead to the next 4 weeks, 56% of households with children nationwide are not very confident they will be able to afford needed food. 9% said they are not at all confident. In Pennsylvania, 52% of households are not very confident. In New Jersey, the number is 55%. This is what the economic collapse looks like, and what we have been through so far is just the beginning. We are entering a period of such widespread economic despair, and if we hope to survive this storm, we will all have to look after each other. For decades, incredibly stupid decisions have caught our nation, and most Americans are completely and utterly unprepared for the very painful times that begin now. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.